So once you've done that, obviously I would say the next stage is understand the gaps within your system. But there's one key thing that you must do prior to all this hard work. Oh yes. And what is it again? Obtain top management support. Without the top management support, your project, your ISMS project is not going anywhere. So when I mean top management, it could be the board, the CEO, the C-suite really. And they must have this commitment to support this ISMS project. So that includes planning for any sort of planning, project planning, implementation, which takes a while, the ongoing operation afterwards, policy creation. You need to sign off the policies. You create ISMS policies, which I will speak about. You need to sign it off. Training, then to pay for it. Ongoing monitoring and review, maintenance. So they're responsible really for the ISMS. Another advantage of having the top management approval on this project is they may have, depends who your top managers are, they have understanding of the laws and probably understanding strategic view, definitely understand the strategic view or direction that the company is going. They understand the laws that apply to their company, or they know where to get the answers from. They definitely know what the critical assets are, because either they know or they know where to get those answers from. Okay, and they obviously, when all this is done, they will obviously conduct a management review. Who may be classified as top management? The CIO, and the Chief Financial Officer. Okay, so during this period of implementation, initiation of this ISMS project, they're going to have various meetings, and during these meetings, obviously they will discuss things like risk, SOA. They're going to definitely do management review really at the end, and you need that input before you actually start running wild with this ISMS implementation. So if you are an implementer of the ISO 27001 and you work within the company, or your external consultant called in to do this, to conduct this task, you must understand the organizational structure and understand what the roles and responsibilities are. Asking to see what the organizational structure will give you insight on who to speak to when you need to obviously interview, observe, and you know who the key responsibilities are, who own these risks as well. Once you've done all this, you have the sign-off from top management, the scoping have been done. Now, it is now for you to do the gap analysis. And this gap analysis is quite an important step when you're implementing information security management system based on the ISO 27001 standard. And you have to go through a few steps. You may have a checklist to assist you in doing this. You're the implementer, or you're the consultant tasked with doing this. First of all, you should know, as I mentioned before, that you know what the scope is of the ISMS. So once that scope is determined, then you can scope the ISMS, and it may cover the processes, the departments, okay, the business unit, or the entire organization. So you know the scope. Okay, so next stage, really at hand, you should have the latest standard of the ISO 27001 standard. And if you do not have one, you need to know where to find one. So where can you get one from? Okay, so I would say simply Google it. Get one for the ISO from themselves, purchase this, or BSI and other organizations that you can acquire this standard from. So you've acquired the standards. You have to compare your current state, the organization's current state, against the requirement of the standard. So you know where you are, which is the current state. In order for you to determine, okay, where is it we are at the moment, things as an implementer or consultant need to do. You need to fully understand the business. And when I say understand the business, understand the employees or the staff working in those particular roles. So you may need to observe and doing the work. Other things you can do is to interview those employees, conduct interviews, questionnaires. You can send out digital questionnaires. I wouldn't advise paper-based. Digital questionnaires to companies, because you would definitely know who the interested parties are. So you need to send out questionnaires to those interested parties, digital, so you can monitor and also chase up those who have actually completed the questionnaires. And then also you reviewed what's the current documentation in place. So when I say documentation, what current policies do they have? And then once you've got the policies as well, again, when was it last reviewed? So they might have a policy, but it needs to be current. You may review other internal audit reports, other things you might do, any contractual obligations as well. You might look at records. You might look at examine vulnerability assessment reports, penetration testings. So these documentation helps you determine the current state of the organization. Implementing ISMS takes a while. And one of the reasons is sometimes people are not available. So you need to obviously plan this. You must have a project plan. And as I said, at the time you're harvesting this information and interviewing, you have the option to either do a group interview. Everybody's in. Okay, let's do a group interview, but it must be scheduled. Or you can do an interview. If you want let's say a more in-depth knowledge, more information, you can do a one-to-one. And the advantage of doing one-to-one, because sometimes when you do individual, this person speaking to in the room and the manager in the room, they probably won't be forthcoming to answer questions. Okay, so you as the implementer, you must determine where you're going to harvest the most information. What is your objective? I want to understand the system, understand what you have at the moment. So you can apply both techniques. Now, once you've identified these gaps, so you know where you are and know where you want to be based on the standard, then you need to prioritize, okay, what are the gaps between organizations' current state and the requirements of the standard? And then prioritize those gaps based on what the criticality or the importance on the impacts on the organization. Next, action plan. You are going to develop an action plan to identify the gaps the gaps really. Now, once with this action plan, you should include the steps that you're going to use to achieve the ISO 27001 requirements to meet those standards. And what resources do we need? So, okay, we identified that, we have no information security policy. Okay, good. Who do we need? So what's a resource? It could be human resources. We need staff, expertise, subject matter experts to create these policies. And then the question is, how long will it take us to create the policies, especially if we're going from ground zero? Do we have a policy already? Do you have a template? If nothing non-existent, then it would definitely take you longer. And then they need to implement the action plan. And then once those plans are implemented, monitor the progress so that the organization will comply with the ISO 27001 standard. Of course, it doesn't end there. So you have to, again, continue reviewing and revising the ISMS, because we need to make sure that it is still effective and it continues to meet the standard. What we're saying here is you've done a gap analysis, you identify the gap, action plans have been implemented, and you're fine. Doesn't mean you go home and that's it. It is ongoing. It's ongoing. Why? Because legislation may change. The scope might decrease or increase. Regulations may change. The industry you operate may change. So if there is a change, you need to go and revise and examine and review your ISMS. Now, obviously, if these are some of the steps, I think I've covered this is quite broad. I believe that once you have exhausted these steps based on the ISO 27001, if you do this gap analysis, I believe that you'll be on the next stage of trying to create some kind of documentation if you do not have any. What do you do lastly? So you have done the gap analysis. So you must I will just come straight to it. You need to write a gap analysis report, because you need to present your findings to top management, whoever commissioned you to do the gap analysis. Okay. So, and again, when you write a report, depending on who the audience is, again, you need to ensure that they understand what the risks are. Because if you present to top management, especially a lot of technical speak, it might go over their head. So understand the audience and then write the report accordingly, and then present. You may need to present your findings to the top management. I'm using that word broadly. Top management could be could be the board. Now, as well as the text, you can use some sort of chart I would advise something that's colourful, something that would, something that will get their attention. Okay, so you present to the board. So there's different charts. There's spider charts. I don't even want to say whatever's best to bring that message across to whoever commissioned you, and if they need to present this to let's say to a third party, they can understand this. On this podcast, I've just talked about gap analysis and the steps to implement gap analysis, and prior to that I mentioned that you must have top management sign off, and also once that's done, you do your scoping and then you do your gap analysis. So this has been the Cybersecurity Happy Hour podcast, and it's Christie. Thank you once again for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast so you are up to date with our latest podcasts. I really appreciate you listening, and if you want to contact me, all the info is in the show notes. However, you can email us at podcast@intexit.co.uk, and if you have any questions, I will definitely reach back and answer your questions. Have a fantastic day. Until next time.